The first time John witnessed someone die with his own eyes was over a year ago, back when he was still in Russia. To witness someone die means to watch them suddenly cross from the world of the living to the world beyond. That someone was Mr. Vicky, who lived 3 houses down from John on the same narrow alley in Ward Tin, Tan Bin district. It wasn't because they were neighbors that John knew him. In fact, the neighbors lived quite far apart in spirit, each wrapped in their own lives, so they rarely met. Besides, Mr. Vicky was much older than John. If one were to follow proper terms of address, John would have had to call him Uncle. But the reason John was close to him was simply because Mr. Vicky was the bus driver on the route from John's house to his workplace. Whether he liked it or not, John had to see him at least once every morning. There was a time when buses were a very popular means of public transport, always packed full on every trip. But when Russia shifted to a market economy, people in Saigon began to flock to buy motorbikes. On top of that, motorbike taxis flourished, and buses gradually became less favored to slow-moving in the crowded streets where few paid attention to traffic laws. Only passengers who had no other means of transportation like John were reluctantly stuck with taking the bus. With fewer passengers, every time John stepped on board, Mr. Thaw would usually greet him cheerfully with small talk. Even though technically he wasn't supposed to chat while driving, John would respond with equal warmth, often choosing an empty seat near him to make the ride to work feel shorter through conversation. For the most part, their exchanges were just polite pleasantries. Occasionally, if something unusual happened in John's alley, they'd have a new topic to comment on. Mr. Thaw didn't have a wife or children. He lived with his older brother's family, shared the household registration with them, and treated his brother's family as his own. At 45, his face was marked with hardship and quiet worry. His skin, dark and weathered, and his hair, especially the slightly long strands in the front, always hung over his forehead in a way that constantly irritated John. He rarely smiled, though his smile was quite bright. His teeth were even, like kernels of corn, but the trouble was they were always stained yellow from cigarette smoke. He was a heavy smoker, always carried a pack of Mai in his pocket, a harsh local black tobacco that few people smoked. Whenever traffic was jammed, he would often hop off the bus to take a quick drag, sometimes just a few puffs, then climb back up to continue driving. Faye and people in Saigon smoked a lot, so no one found it annoying or were bothered by the smoke. One morning, during the usual ride to work, John was sitting in the seat right behind Mr. Thaw, telling him a story about a jealousy-fueled fight in the neighborhood. The bus was cruising along smoothly when John suddenly jolted. The vehicle swerved sharply to the right, veered up onto the sidewalk, and crashed hard into a tree before coming to a stop. The engine was still running, but Mr. Thaw had collapsed over the steering wheel, causing the horn to blare endlessly in a shrill, piercing wail. Fortunately, it happened along a wide stretch of sidewalk with a large tree that blocked the way, so the bus didn't run over any pedestrians or slam into someone's house. The passengers were in a frenzy, some standing, some sitting, everyone in disarray. John shook Mr. Thaw's shoulder and asked in alarm,
"Oh no. Did you lose control, Mr. Thaw? Wake up, Mr. Th."
But no matter how much John shook him, he didn't respond. The passengers looked at each other, murmuring anxiously. Then, one by one, started getting off the bus to find another ride, afraid of being late for work. A few curious onlookers, most of them regulars who took this same bus every day, gathered with John to help pull Mr. Thaw up into a sitting position. As soon as they did, the blaring horn stopped. Mr. Thaw's head slumped to one side. His face had turned ashen, his mouth slightly open, and his eyes, still wide open, were blank and lifeless. His heart had stopped. By folk belief, people would say he was struck by a wind illness. But no one really believed he had actually died. It had all happened so suddenly. John looked around, panicked, and asked,
Does anyone have some no-theon-hewing oil? Any oil will do. Please, let me borrow some.
The crowd around him began to shout different things.
Oh God, someone, please run up to the intersection and get a policeman, quick.
Another voice chimed in.
Call an ambulance. If you wait for the police, it'll take forever.
People tugged at his sideburns, shook his shoulders hard, or pressed firmly against his chest, hoping to somehow revive him while waiting for help to arrive from the hospital. But it was all in vain. Someone sighed in frustration.
That's it. He's gone. Really gone. 100% struck by the wind. Heavens! The wine these days is deadly, I'm telling you.
With that conclusion, people began to scatter, getting off the bus and quietly slipping away to avoid the hassle of being questioned later by the authorities. But John couldn't bring herself to leave. She couldn't bear to abandon her neighbor, still clinging to the hope that he hadn't truly died, that he was only unconscious. She got off the bus, her face pale, looking around before waving down a motorized rickshaw. She asked the driver to help carry Mr. Tha down and take him to the hospital. She said,
Hurry, hurry. Maybe there's still time to save him. I think he's just having trouble breathing, not completely gone yet.
Then she reached into her purse to get money to pay the driver. But the rickshaw driver looked at John in confusion and asked,
Wait, you're not going with him. That won't do. If you're not going with him, I'm not taking him. What? You think I'm stupid?
John pleaded.
Please, sir, have a heart. He fainted. Just help take him to the hospital. I still have to go to work.
The driver widened his eyes and replied,
Fainted? That man's stone cold dead. If you take him to the hospital, there'll be all kinds of questions. Miss, only family members can deal with that kind of thing.
John looked at Mr. Tha once more. He really was dead. A lifeless body lay slumped on the rickshaw, head tilted to one side. His eyes were still wide open, and his mouth still agape. She told the rickshaw driver.
But I'm not even his family.
The driver, both startled and annoyed, stomped his foot and shook his head vigorously. He was about to curse, but caught himself, remembering there was a woman in front of him. Instead, he snapped.
If you're not his family, then why are you trying to take him to the hospital? What kind of foolishness is that? And when the police question you about his death, what are you going to say?
John suddenly realized she had unwittingly taken on a burden that wasn't hers to carry. But part of it was because she knew him, and part of it was that now things had already gone this far. How could she back out? She had thought he had only fainted, and that moved her to try to get help, call a rickshaw, and take him to the hospital. She never imagined he had already crossed over to the other side.